There is a moment in every monetary system where nothing appears broken. Markets still function. Currencies still trade. Governments still borrow. People still believe. But underneath the surface, the structure has already changed. That moment is called Stage 5. Not collapse, not crisis, transition. And by every historical measure, the US dollar has entered it. This is not a prediction. It is a position in a cycle. History does 7 stages of monetary dominance. Every global reserve currency has followed the same sequence. Different empires, different centuries, different cultures, same structure. Stage 1, military and trade dominance. Stage 2, productive supremacy and trade surpluses. Stage 3, formal reserve status. Stage 4, financialization and deindustrialization. Stage 5, debt saturation and structural deficits. Stage 6, currency weaponization and global hedging. Stage 7, loss of exclusivity and multipolar transition. Portugal followed this path, so did Spain, the Dutch Republic, the British Empire, and now the United States. The critical Stage 1, power before money. Reserve currencies do not begin with trust, they begin with force. Portugal controlled maritime choke points. Spain controlled the New World's silver flows. The Dutch controlled global shipping lanes. Britain controlled the seas. After World War II, the United States inherited this position. Global military reach, control of trade routes, security guarantees for allies. When trade cannot function without you, demand for your currency becomes structural. This was the foundation of the dollar, and it still exists. Stage 2, production creates credibility. Have you ever wondered how a currency becomes the king of the world? It all starts with making stuff, a lot of stuff. Take the US dollar. After World War II, America was a powerhouse, producing almost half of everything made in the world's factories. Think about that for a second. Half. This wasn't just about numbers, it was about trust. Factories were booming, exports were flying out, and gold was piling up. America was selling more than it was buying, so it had massive trade surpluses. National debt was low, and everyone was becoming more efficient and productive. People trusted the dollar because they trusted American manufacturing. When you make things the world wants, your currency is seen as solid, reliable, and strong. This is the golden era, the productive phase of a reserve currency. But as history shows us, this powerful stage never sticks around forever. Stage 3, the privilege phase. In 1944, at Bretton Woods, the dollar became the world's reserve currency. Oil priced in dollars, trade settled in dollars, central banks held dollars. This created something unprecedented, exorbitant privilege. America could issue debt in its own currency. Other nations had to earn dollars through production. The United States could consume more than it produced. At first, this was manageable. Then it became structural. And structure changes behavior. Stage 4, finance replaces industry. Ever wonder how the US dollar became king of the world? Let's jump back to 1944. A small town called Bretton Woods is where it all happened. The world's leaders gathered and made a monumental decision. The US dollar would be the new global reserve currency. What did this mean? Suddenly, everything important was priced in dollars. Oil, international trade, you name it. Central banks around the globe started stockpiling dollars like treasury. This created a unique situation for America, often called exorbitant privilege. Think about it. Other countries had to work hard, produce goods, and export them to earn dollars. But the United States, it could simply print more. This allowed America to consume far more than it produced, a luxury no other nation had. Initially, this was a small advantage, but over time, it became a fundamental part of the global economic system, shaping everything that came after. Stage 5, debt saturation. Alright, let's talk about a critical point in the economic cycle, what some call Stage 5, debt saturation. This is the moment the whole game changes. It's when the growth of debt isn't just a temporary spike. It structurally and permanently starts to outpace the real growth of the economy. Think about the United States right now. We're looking at federal debt that has blown past $34 trillion. The country's total debt compared to its economic output, or GDP, is over 120%. And if you add up all public and private debt, it's more than 3 times the size of the entire economy. Here's the kicker. Interest payments on this debt are now one of the fastest growing expenses for the federal government. We're running huge deficits even when the economy is supposedly doing well. This is the classic sign of Stage 5. Debt is no longer just a cycle. It's become a structural part of our system. Why Stage 5 feels safe? I feel safe. Stage 5 does not feel like crisis. Markets still rally. The currency still dominates. Borrowing still works. That is the illusion. Because reserve status masks fragility. Foreign capital recycles into treasury bonds. This suppresses interest rates. This extends leverage. This delays adjustment. But the system becomes sensitive. Small changes in rotas produce outsized fiscal pressure. At stage 5, interest rates matter more than growth rates. That is the warning sign. The mathematics of stage 5. Have you ever wondered what happens when a country's debt just keeps growing? Let's break down the math. Imagine the national debt is growing at 5% each year, but the economy, or GDP, is only growing at 2%. That gap means the debt-to-GDP ratio gets worse and worse. Now, add interest rates into the mix. For years they've been super low, but what happens when they go back to normal? Suddenly, the cost of paying interest on that massive debt skyrockets. Here's the real problem. Money spent on interest doesn't build new roads, improve schools, or boost our productivity. It's just paying for past spending. When interest payments start growing faster than the money the government brings in, things get tight. Choices become limited. And that's a dangerous place to be. It's a pattern we've seen over and over again in history. What comes after stage 5? History tells us a clear story. After stage 5 comes stage 6. It's not an overnight change, but it's an inevitable one. So, what triggers stage 6? It begins when the world's dominant currency starts being used more and more as a weapon. Think about it. Sanctions get broader, assets are frozen, and access to the financial system becomes conditional. This isn't just about weakening adversaries. It sends a powerful signal to everyone else. There's risk involved. And what do rational countries and companies do when they see risk? They start looking for alternatives. They hedge. This shift creates a ripple effect, quietly reshaping the global financial landscape. It's a fascinating and critical moment in economic history that we're seeing unfold. Stage 6, hedging begins. Have you ever thought about what makes a country's savings truly theirs? Imagine your savings account could be frozen at any moment. Would you still feel it's 100% yours? That's the question central banks are asking now. When financial systems get tangled in politics, smart players don't rebel. They get insurance. So what does this insurance look like? It's happening right now. Central banks are diversifying their reserves, moving away from just holding one currency. They're buying more gold, a lot more. Countries are also making deals to trade directly with each other, bypassing the usual systems. And new payment networks are popping up to offer alternatives. Now, this doesn't mean the dollar is disappearing tomorrow, not at all, but it's like a tiny crack in a huge dam. It slowly erodes the dollar's exclusive status as the world's go-to currency. And it's that very exclusivity that has given it so much power for so long. The game is changing, one small step at a time. The China and BRICS factor. For decades, the US dollar was the undisputed king of global finance. It just wasn't another option. But that's changing. China's economy is now massive, making up almost a fifth of the entire world's GDP. It's the #1 trading partner for over 120 countries. To handle all this trade, China created its own system called CIPS. Now, it's not a swift killer, but it gives countries another choice, reducing their reliance on the dollar-centric system. Then you have the BRICS nations. Together, they represent over 40% of the world's population and a huge chunk of commodity production. They're increasingly trading with each other using their own currencies. This isn't about the dollar collapsing overnight. It's about its monopoly slowly eroding as new players rise on the global stage. The world's financial landscape is becoming more diverse. Why marginal shifts matter. Have you ever wondered what could actually challenge the US dollar's dominance? It's not about a sudden collapse. It's about a slow, marginal shift. Think about it. Reserve systems don't break when demand for them suddenly vanishes. They start to weaken when demand becomes optional. So, what happens if just 10 or 15% of global trade decides to bypass the dollar? That small change has a big ripple effect. Demand for US Treasury bonds goes down. When that happens, the yields on those bonds have to go up to attract buyers. Higher yields mean the government has to pay more interest on its debt. This is the dangerous part. The cost of servicing the debt starts growing faster than the entire economy. It creates a feedback loop where debt spirals, potentially weakening the dollar's position even further. It's these small cracks that can eventually threaten the whole foundation. Stage 7. Loss of exclusivity. You've ever wondered if the US dollar could just collapse? Well, history tells us it's not that dramatic. Reserve currencies don't just disappear overnight. Take the British pound, for example. After World War I, it didn't just vanish. Instead, it slowly faded over decades. Its total dominance gave way to a world with multiple powerful currencies. It went from being the one and only to just one of the team. The same thing is likely to happen with the dollar. It probably won't disappear, but its exclusive grip on the world economy might loosen. We could be heading towards a multipolar system where several currencies share the spotlight. It's not about elimination. It's about redistribution of power. What do you think this future looks like? Let me know in the comments. What stage 5 means right now. So, what does it mean to be in stage 5 right now? Well, it points to a few big shifts in how our economy works. First, we're seeing a much higher sensitivity to interest rates. Even small changes can have a huge impact. Second, we're facing persistent deficits, and they don't seem to go away even when the economy is growing. This leads to the third point, rising political conflict. When resources are tight, everyone fights over their piece of the pie. And finally, we're seeing more and more use of monetary tools, like from the central bank, just to keep things stable. The system still works, but it needs constant intervention and maintenance, kind of like an old car. Can stage 5 be reversed? History tells us there's only one way out, and it's a narrow path. For a society to pull back from the brink, its productivity growth must outpace its debt growth. Think about that. We have to create more value, faster than we're accumulating IOUs. So, how do we do it? It's not magic. It demands a massive effort on 4 key fronts. First, industrial reinvestment. We need to rebuild the very foundations of our manufacturing and infrastructure. Second, technological breakthroughs. We need game-changing innovations that redefine what's possible. Third, energy abundance. Plentiful energy is the lifeblood of any thriving economy. And finally, political coherence. Everyone needs to be pulling in the same direction, united by a common purpose. Is it possible? Yes, but looking back through history, it's incredibly rare at this late stage of the cycle. The harsh truth is that privilege erodes discipline, and it's discipline that sustains dominance. The hard truth. Let's talk about the hard truth. The dollar isn't collapsing. But let's be clear, it's no longer the early days. It's not even mid-cycle anymore. The US dollar has officially entered what some call stage 5. So, what does history tell us comes next? Well, not tomorrow, and probably not next year, but we know the direction. The next phase is stage 6. This is where we see a major push for hedging, for diversification, and for fragmentation of the global system. After that, stage 7, the Great Transition. This isn't about panic. It's about understanding the long-term trends and being prepared for what's on the horizon. The global financial landscape is shifting, and knowing these stages is key. Final perspective. Reserve currencies don't die in a dramatic panic. They fade away, aging silently in the background. They hang on, sometimes for decades, until a critical point is reached when the confidence people have in them can no longer keep up with the sheer amount of debt that has been created. Think about it. Confidence is something you feel. It's qualitative. Debt, on the other hand, is a number you can count. It's quantitative. The real trouble starts when those quantitative obligations, the mountains of debt, become so huge that they completely overshadow the qualitative trust holding everything together. That's when the adjustment begins. This phase, stage 5, isn't the dramatic end you might imagine. It's the turning point. The system still appears to work, which is what makes this stage so dangerous. History doesn't send out an announcement for these major shifts. It just records them after they happen, and history is very clear. Stage 5 always comes before the big change. Thanks for watching.